Well, let's get to our special guest here because I'm excited. Obviously, we talked about some potential NFC North matchups, and who else to get but our guy, Dusty Evely, who also, and I hope I pronounced your last name correctly, Packers writer for Cheesehead TV, Packers Report, and also a part of the Pack a Day podcast. He joins the program. Welcome to the show, Dusty.
Oh,
How you doing, my man? Welcome.
Fellas, what's going on? Thanks for having me. I appreciate you guys having me on.
We're good, Dusty. I'm excited to have you. It's always good to get kind of people that are in a similar field, but again, a different market. You obviously do a lot of work for the Green Bay Packers, and we spoke with Tom Grossi, who was on the show as well, and it's always fun having Tom on because of the Brian Branch reaction. The Lions jumping the Packers against Brian Branch. It happens, Dusty. I need your thoughts on this. Right, the Lions trade up to get Terrion Arnold, and the Packers get tackled Jordan Morgan, which I do want your thoughts on that pick as well, but.
Mm-hmm.
Was there, when you're watching the draft, just be honest with me, Dusty, we're allies here.
Sure.
Was there a part of you that, did you want Terrion Arnold, or were you completely okay with what the Packers did there?
Ultimately, by the time the draft is over, I have talked myself into every single person the Packers have drafted, and I've said that every other person is garbage and is terrible. But no, Terrion Arnold was my dude. Like, that was, if you look at what the Packers are switching to from a defensive standpoint, I think they needed help at cornerback. I don't know if they need a ton of help at cornerback. Like, safety was a bigger need, but the way Arnold plays and the way Hafley wants to coach his defense, 1000%. Like, I 100% want to. And then as soon as he went off the board, like, okay, I didn't want him anyway. I want him. But no, that was 100% my dude. I absolutely wanted Terrion Arnold.
We do the same stuff, Dusty. We do the same stuff.
every single time.
Yeah, we're all guilty.
Dusty, I want to ask you this too, just kind of being in the NFC North, we love talking with other people around the division because it's interesting to hear thoughts on the Lions and different teams. We went over on our show yesterday some kind of execs that didn't put their name out there talking about Brad Holmes. Want to get kind of your kind of feeling over there in Green Bay in regards to how you guys feel about Brad Holmes as a GM here in the NFC North, and kind of the way that's shaping with him constantly, trading up, trading back, doing all these moves and adding the roster that he has. Just what are your thoughts on that, and kind of how the executives around the NFL have been talking about him?
I mean, I don't think just personally, because I get into the film stuff, but I tie in fairly closely to analytics stuff as well. He does not run that team in the smartest way. I mean, you look at like just taking like the British Columbia kid or whatever this year, like yep. That is a bad move in the fourth round. That is a bad move. And maybe that works out well. I mean, overall, I like how they're building the roster. They go up, they like the guys they like, right? I mean, they should not have drafted a linebacker and a running back in the first round last year. Like, I'll stand on the table for that. If those players are good, that's fine.
You're pushing the papers over the table almost here.
I love this. No, I love it.
Hey.
We said we wanted the truth from the division. On the division, we're getting the truth.
That's all I'm saying. I mean, listen, they've got a good team. They're building their team a very specific way. Like, there's, I guess, a certain type of player they want. And I think especially like Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw both like are you look at those guys when they drafted them, like, oh, they're going to fit right in. Like, those guys are dogs. Like, they want a certain type of guy on defense. They want a certain type of guy on offense. They're going, speed with some of the offensive stuff, obviously with Gibbs and stuff last year. So some of this stuff has worked out. I don't know, man. I saw Jack Campbell last year. It's like, that's a bad move. The British Columbia guy, like, that's one of those things like process and results, right? Like, it's possible the British Columbia guy works out. It's possible Jack Campbell turns into a halfway decent linebacker. That's bad process to do that still. Like, more often than not, you're not going to hit on those. There's more valuable spots there. But the one thing I will say I really love about him, I'm not a GM. I'll never be a GM. I think he runs the team the way he wants to run it. And if he's right, that dude talks. Like, just absolutely. And I 100% love it. Like, everyone says, don't do these things. And then those things hit. And he's like, okay, who's talking now? Like, I love the attitude. Like, run the team the way you want to run it. And listen, you're allowed to talk as long as you're hitting on that stuff. So just talk your talk. I absolutely love that about him.
Love it.
Yeah, and Dusty, obviously, Jordan Love took a huge step last year, and going into year two, you kind of think Jordan Love and Jared Goff, as of now, are probably the two best quarterbacks in the NFC North. How much better do you think Jordan Love can get going into next year?
I mean, I think we've seen at the end of the year, I think is I mean, he can get better than that. I think a little more consistent footwork wise. I think still one of the things that he really struggled with early in the year was kind of knowing when to throw the ball away. And he got better with that. Kind of, if he sat behind Rodgers, that's the one thing he should have learned is like,
Right.
I'm allowed to throw the ball away. I can do this. He still did lean into that. I mean, the game-ending interception against the 49ers was a first down. I'm throwing late to the middle of the field, 30 yards down the field, throw the ball away. Like, take what you can. And so I think there's areas like that he can, and I think he has said as much as well. He can get better there. I think he can get a little more consistent. His quick game, his accuracy on quick game, especially some of the quick out stuff, it just is not there. That's wildly inconsistent on some of that. But I think we saw some of as the year went on, his consistency, his rapport with those receivers as they went on. I mean, I think there's still room. The deep ball looked bad early in the season. I think that was more a timing thing than anything. So I think he can get better. But really, I mean, what we saw against the Bears week 18, and then we saw against the Cowboys. Like, listen, if that's his ceiling, I'm 1000% here for. Like, that's still a top 10 QB. But I think his talent, I think what he showed, his command of the offense, I think there is still room to get better. But it's it's incremental at this point. Like, I think it's not like he's going supernova. I don't think he's ever going to be like the number one quarterback in the league or anything like that. But like, I think he can consistently be like top 5, top 10. If he's showing what he showed. The thing that makes you nervous is like, and there's reasons for it. He showed that for like the last 8 games of the year or whatever. Is like, is that who he is? Personally, I think it is, just based on what we saw, like his growth since he's been in the league. But that it still does give me a little bit of pause. But if that's who he is, who he was in the Dallas game, that's who he is. Sign me up, man. I'm here.
Dusty, what about Goff? What are your thoughts on Goff? Just in terms of, because it's funny because we have this conversation with people here in the chat. It's always Jordan Love, Jared Goff, 2 best quarterbacks in the division. Where are you at with just an outside perspective? Because it is refreshing to hear someone that's not obviously a Lions fan. But what do you think about Goff so far?
He's Drew Bledsoe. I mean, he's Drew Bledsoe. He's a statue. And listen, there's like one of the most embarrassing moments for the Packers last year. Goff ran for like 12 yards on him. I was like, no, like dude can't move. But he's got a gun. He's smart when he's protected. I mean, that's what you want. I say Drew Bledsoe. That's a little older. He's a less mobile Kirk Cousins. If things are perfect around him and they set up, listen, man, like that offense, that I like to look at a bunch of different offenses, like schematically across the league, what they're doing. That Lions offense is so much fun to watch. The running game is a blast. What they're doing, the passing game is so much fun. They've got talent around him. So if he's got talent, like he's good. The problem with him, I remember the first year Joe Barry was the defensive coach. I was at that game. It was the Packers Lions, was the Packers home opener. And yeah, I'm sorry, Joe Barry's gone. And Goff was lighting up the first half, and the rumor was LaFleur basically like held Barry up against the wall in the locker room, was like, blitz him, and then he didn't do anything the second half. And so, like, if you can get in his face, you can get a little bit of pressure on him, make him uncomfortable, make things less than perfect. I mean, yeah, you can absolutely beat him up, and then he will start making mistakes. But you give him a clean pocket, which the Lions can do. He operates well. Now, if I was a Lions fan, I'd be nervous about giving him $45 million a year as this extension kind of creeps closer. But I think he's a perfectly fine quarterback. He is a good winning quarterback, provided he's got everything around him, right? He's got a good line and at least 1 or 2 good weapons. And Lions have that.
Yeah. Packers legend Joe Barry. But continue.
Kind of transitions perfectly into my question. So Joe Barry, we loved him as Lions fan. He's gone. And you got Jeff Hafley now. Corrected if I pronounce that right.
Correct.
What do you think? What are Packers fans? What are their expectations now that the defensive coordinator position is hopefully to be shored up?
Like sky high. Like, listen, all it is like, can the defense be competent? Like, that's all we wanted. That's legitimately all we want at this point. Can the defense be competent? Can they stop a running play when they know a run is coming? Like, is that something they can do? Are they going to play off coverage on 3rd and 2? Is someone going to be 20 yards off the line on the outside? No. Okay, we're all in. Like, it's a very low bar to clear. But as someone I watched a bunch of Hafley when they made that hire. If you listen to him talk, he did a podcast. I can't remember with who, the old Penn State tight end. I'm blanking on dude's name right now. Like 2 days before he got hired as a Packers defensive coordinator. So that was making the rounds. You listen to him talk there. You listen to him talk in interviews. He's given one of the things the Packers fans always want: press coverage, man. Everyone wants press coverage. He gave a clinic on press coverage that's available on YouTube. It's like an hour long. I watched that entire thing. Everyone, listen. There's something wrong with me personally, but
you're an animal, Dusty.
Oh, there's something. I don't know what's wrong with you, dude. But yeah, sky high. Like, there's everything coming out has been aggressive brand of defense. I think he's going to change stuff up a little bit, but based on who they have, what they've been looking at, kind of who they've brought in and what he's been saying, they're going to play aggressive. They talk about like dictating the terms of the offense, which everyone wants to say, except Joe Barry, who never once said that. So we're over the moon right now. We'll see what happens when the season starts, but it's a low bar to clear. But the Green Bay Packers fans are just absolutely thrilled. The fear was they won that Dallas game. They got close to beating the 49ers, and then Joe Barry was getting another year. Like, we were terrified of that. So
I have never seen like such incompetent red zone defense in my life. I think it was the Raiders game where I think you guys came out in like a dime package in like inside the 5, and I was like, what is like it literally schematically made no sense.
Dude,
and
listen,
I mean,
Preston Smith was man to man on Devontae Adams in the slot. Like, that's what you need to know.
Well, Dusty, I want to ask you the NFC North outlook. We talk about it a lot. Bears obviously drafted Caleb Williams, and they go out and get a receiver at 9, and they've been doing a great job so far with Ryan Poles, in my opinion. Very different from the Bears we kind of know with prior regimes. And I do think in a couple of years, the Bears, especially Caleb Williams, I do think he'll be a really good quarterback. And I've made this argument too. The NFC North, and especially in terms of quarterback play, and we always use this with Goff. Like, Goff is now the oldest quarterback, and it keeps getting younger. JJ with Minnesota. What's your thoughts on where the NFC North is going? Because, Dusty, I do believe that the NFC North will be, maybe not this year, but the next couple of years, one of the toughest divisions in the NFL.
Yeah, it's looking good. I every time I start to think like, well, maybe the Bears know what they're doing, they draft a punter in the 4th round. It's like, well, maybe they don't know 100% what they're doing. You know, I mean, I love Caleb. I love like Rome Odunze. I think like that 1-2 pairing. I love for them, not for me. I love that they didn't overthink it. I mean, they could have traded out of 9, but I like that they paired Caleb and Rome, who were palling around a whole bunch the week leading up to the draft. So I think it's going to be good. But yeah, I mean, this has been for a very long time. It was the Packers and everyone else. And then you had for about a year or two, like the Vikings seemed like the clear team, with the Packers as kind of sneaky, and then the Lions kind of coming up when the past few years, and then the Bears just kind of whatever. But I mean, the way everything is going, so I'm looking at the draft now, I think the Lions, like you said, Lions are still, I don't know if they're the favorites in the division. I've not really looked at that yet, but they've got to be in that conversation. The Vikings are the team to me. Like, they have always been solid, and I like Kevin O'Connell. I like Adolfo Menza. I like the GM. Like, I think they are good. But man, they're stuck between this weird rebuild and contention. And I will say the biggest laugh I got out of the draft was JJ McCarthy, trading up for JJ McCarthy. I do not like JJ McCarthy.
Hey, well,
I'm going to enjoy playing against JJ McCarthy. I think I'm very excited about that. But yeah, it is. I mean, this was a fairly bad division for a while. I think all these teams could make some noise. You could tell me any one of these teams won the division after this year, and like, it wouldn't shock me a single bit.
Yeah.
The JJ stuff, I'm with you. You know what? He's the enemy now. I was a Michigan.
Oh
guy.
man, it's Michigan. I forgot. I
was a Michigan. No,
Hey.
hey. As soon as the draft happened, our crew here, our show here, we had a quick get together and say he's the enemy now. We have to deal with that. So
yeah, Booner's a big JJ guy. We fought him for a long time.
I was.
We're with you.
Dusty, I want to ask you about your guys' second round there for the draft and kind of get your thoughts on that and the feelings on that. Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, just kind of, it seemed like that second round was, hey, we need to get some dudes on this defensive end and try and build that up a little bit. And you guys got some dudes, it looks like. What are your thoughts on that? And kind of what was your favorite part about, I guess, outside of the first round, at that round 2 and pass, what was your favorite addition they added there in Green Bay?
Yeah, I mean, Gutekunst, what he did, he's done this before. He did this last year with the wide receivers. If they have a need at a position, he'll just spam it. He'll just assume, like, I'm throwing bodies at it and one of these guys is going to hit. I mean, those two guys there, especially Edge Cooper and Javon Bullard, those are my two dudes. Like, those were the guys. I don't love linebackers in the first round. This is not Jack Campbell hate. This was also Quay Walker hate. So listen, I'm on the same boat here. I don't love first round linebackers unless it's like a guaranteed slam dunk generational type of dude, which like linebackers, they usually don't hit till year 3. Like, you don't draft those guys in the first round. But as far as what the Packers need in this defense, what the Packers already have, which they didn't have safeties, like coming in, they signed Xavier McKinney and free agency. They didn't have safeties. They were going to start Anthony Johnson Jr. as like their second safety, who was a 7th round dude out of Florida last year. And the linebacker was Quay Walker. Isaiah McDuffie, and then a handful of other dudes who's like they hopefully we're not going to make the team. So they were needs. I don't love drafting for need, but at the same time, if you're going to do it, spam the position. So they got Edge Cooper, who I think is going to fit really well next to Quay. Is kind of like a coverage guy who can also play downhill. And then Bullard was my number one dude. I mean, you look at what the Hafley wants to play. He talks about single high defense. He wants to play like a single high, essentially cover one. He wants to play kind of a Sally. He wants to play cover one, cover three. Even when he does quarter stuff, he wants to fall back into that as opposed to starting out from that. So starting from a single high look. And if you have McKinney as your single high, Bullard is a dude who can fall down the slot. He can also, you can mix him up on the back if you want to play quarters, or if you want to bring McKinney down, put Bullard back for a snap. He can range out in the back in the backfield there as well. He can also play box safety. So Bullard, I think for what they were looking for, is a perfect skill set. And so both of those guys, like Bullard was, I was driving back. I watched the draft with my brothers. And I was driving back with my youngest brother after day one. And we both were like, listen, if they get Bullard tomorrow, I don't really care what else happens. So they got Bullard, thrilled about that. And then later on they grab, so it's basically got like these two rangy safeties with McKinney and Bullard. And then they grab Evan Williams and Oladapo, who are just like box dudes, like just basically hybrid linebackers, box dudes, which is what they want. And so you're kind of doubling up on all these. You've got two positions for the safety, kind of specific looks you want out of them. They now have two guys who could range the backfield and two guys who are essentially in the box thumpers. So I absolutely love what they did day two. And I love the swing at Kalen King in the 7th round. Big fan of that, but really like Oladapo was my dude. That was my, if you're going to get a box safety, I don't love that early, but they grabbed him 5th round. Grabbed him in the 5th round. I love that move. So I think those guys are going to fit perfectly, but I think the Edge Cooper and Bullard, they fulfill a need, but also grabbed, in my mind, the number one linebacker, number one safety in the draft this year. So I'm thrilled with those additions.
Yeah, and Dusty, you guys made some moves, obviously, in the RB room this offseason. You let go of Aaron Jones. He obviously moves to the Vikings to bring in Josh Jacobs. How much of a difference will Josh Jacobs make in the Green Bay offense compared to Aaron Jones? I personally, I was a fan of Aaron Jones. You could get him involved in the pass game, certainly, and he could run the ball. He played very good down the stretch. How much of a difference will it be with Josh Jacobs?
Yeah. I don't know if they win that Dallas game without Aaron Jones. Just what he did. If you listen to him, I don't know if you listen to the Micah Parsons podcast, you listen to Jordan Love talking to Micah Parsons and talking about basically Aaron Jones not always following what the play is drawn up to, but just like basically selling out for pass pro and how he kind of screwed up their entire plan with Micah Parsons. I don't know if they win that game, or they probably win that game, but they probably don't win that game as handily as they do without Aaron Jones. So he's a big part of this offense. I mean, I think one of the things you get is a couple things. One of them is durability. Jones, for all of his, I mean, the thing with him in Green Bay for years, all the fans were like, give him more carries. But the fact that he didn't get a whole lot, he was always a timeshare dude, meant that his career lasted a little longer. But then even he was, I mean, I think he's listed at 5'10". Dude's not 5'10". Dude's 5'8", 5'9". Like he's maybe 200 pounds. Like he's a smaller dude. He's tough. He can run between the tackles, great in pass pro, but he has started to miss more games. Like, so I think you get durability with Josh Jacobs. You get a little more speed. Jones still like slippery back, quick through the hole, but never had that top end speed. He was like at his best, like a 4.5, 4.6 guy, something like that. Jacobs gives you a little more of the breakaway speed. Also kind of a bigger runner, kind of more of a thumper with that speed.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if you look at what they did, I think from the passing game, Josh Jacobs, this is a wild stat to me, has never caught a touchdown pass in the NFL, does not have a single receiving touchdown in the NFL, but most of his receptions come downfield. In the past 2 years, I think Aaron Jones had 2 targets past the line of scrimmage, something like that. And he is a good receiver, but he just hadn't been used that way. So I think probably a little bit more downfield passing out of the backfield with that. And then they picked up Marshawn Lloyd. I'm curious to see how that plays out as well as kind of the other guy with, I assume Dylan, they brought Dylan back in a super cheap deal. So he's probably RB3, I would imagine. But yeah, I think Jacobs gives you, another leader in the room who's the captain with the Raiders. I think everyone with the Raiders hated to see him go, but you just get a little more speed, you get a little more durability, and you got 4 or 5 years younger. I'm really excited to see what they do. They've been trying to move for a while into more of a gap scheme running attack. They've been wide zone for so long, and Jones is a very good zone runner. And I think Jacobs and Lloyd, are both better gap scheme runner. Dylan, you can throw in there as well. So I think this may mark a change in kind of how they attack on the ground as well. So It's sad to see Jones go. He was like one of my all-time favorite Packers. Great running back, a ton of fun. By all accounts, like a genuinely very, very good dude. Like, it was always one of the highly voted guy. He was always the Walter Payton Man of the Year nominee, stuff like that. So we're gonna miss him. But I'm excited about this running back room.
Yeah, Dusty, staying on the offensive side of the ball, a guy that I kind of talk about sometimes and I get a little scoffs is Bo Melton. I think right now he's the wide receiver 4. But when I watch Packers games, especially the back end of the seasons, I'm like, who the fuck is that guy? Because Christian Watson, I like him. Romeo Doubs, I like him. Jaden Reed, I really like. But when I watch Bo Melton, that's who scares me, because with his frame, with his intangibles, if he hits, that's 4 wide receivers, and I think he has the highest ceiling. What are Packers fans, or where is he going to rank as this wide receiver? Where is this wide receiver depth chart going to rank as a whole?
It is funny because his name does come up. I mean, he was an ad last year. I think he went to Rutgers. I can't remember where he was before, but he was always kind of a practice squad, kind of late rotation type of guy. They had, but Watson and Dobbs were always thought to be like the 1-2, and then last year was Jaden Reed and Dontayvion Wicks. Dontayvion Wicks is my dude. Samori Toure was a guy out of Nebraska who was always like, he's fast, maybe he can turn into something, but he just is like tall man, run fast, essentially what he is. And Melton was kind of, I mean, he was wide receiver 6 basically behind there. I still think he's behind. I think he's got a very specific role. He's turned into a pretty good blocker, good route runner. He had an absolutely filthy route against the Niners in the playoffs for a touchdown. A little like fake wide receiver screen there that was just absolutely disgusting. So I'm very excited about him. As far as the wide receiver stuff, I think Watson is the clear-cut difference maker guy if he can stay healthy is the big thing. I think Dobbs has question marks. I think Wicks profiles as kind of like probably your backside X, kind of your ISO guy, and he showed a lot this past year. And Reed's then a speed and twitchy kind of. You can get him they gave him all the jet sweep stuff, but Melton is kind of that. I mean, he doesn't have like the burner speed of Watson, but he is still a fast dude, a good receiver. I mean, he seems to me. I think he's pretty clearly. If everyone's healthy, I still think he's wide receiver 5. Now I'm not the biggest fan of Dobbs at the moment. If you want to slot him in as like the dude opposite Watson or something, I'd be totally fine with that. I think he has shown, I think, better hands consistently than Dobbs has, but he's been a really fun piece that really came on late in the season. I really like him a lot. I was really hoping they grabbed Max Melton in the draft, his brother. I was really excited about, but that didn't work out.
Well, Dusty, before we let you go, I got to ask you, what Lucas Van Ness?
Yeah.
What's a fair expectation for a player like him? Because he's intriguing, didn't start in college, but he was productive. What's like the Packers' perspective on him?
The start thing in college is funny because that is like Iowa doesn't start dudes unless they're seniors essentially. So he would, if you look at his snaps, he would not be on the field for like the first 2 snaps, but then he was in after that. So like he didn't start, but he played most of the game. I'm excited about him in this defense just because you watch him last year. That was one of the knocks him coming out of college is like you put the dude in a 2-point stance and like he doesn't know what to do. And they had him last year. He's the stand up defensive edge, stuff like that. He didn't like his get off wasn't great. He was too high. Like he was an athletic freak. So you'd see these moments where like that's what we want to see right there. But I don't know that he was overly effective from that stance. I think with Hafley's defense, I think we're getting a hand in the dirt, true defensive end. He's got the size for it. He's got the speed, not necessarily the bend. The Packers don't love kind of their bendy edges. They like their kind of larger pocket crushing edges. And so I think he was never going to be their guy last year. Like that was the Rashawn Gary thing. It was like they brought him in. The plan was by year 3, Gary was going to be something. And I think the same thing was true of Van Ness. He was a little raw. They had some packages designed for him, but I think this year, because they still got, it's Rashawn Gary on one side. The other side, if you're looking like kind of their base or their nickel, that 4-man front, Preston Smith, I don't even know if he can put his hand in the ground anymore. And I think Hafley's going to want that. So I think Van Ness getting a lot of playing time. I think he's getting his hand in the dirt. And if you watch him hand in the dirt versus hand not in the dirt, it's a different player there. So I'm not looking for double-digit sacks this year. I don't think he's quite there yet, but I think he can disrupt certainly more than he did last year. So I don't know if I'm super high on him. I'm pretty excited to see what he's going to bring in this defense. So
no doubt. Dusty, we appreciate you, man, taking the time tonight. Hopefully, we can get you back on.
Appreciate it,
guys, twice this year. Maybe game week we can do some sort of collab. It's a great segment. So we appreciate you. Again, you guys can check more Dusty out. He has his own. Obviously, he's a part of a podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. Check them out at Packers Report at Cheesehead TV writes for all those platforms. All right, Dusty, we appreciate you. We'll catch you.
Shout out.
Closer probably
Appreciate
to
you,
the
fellas. Thanks for having me on. We'll talk to you
season.
later in
No
the season.
problem. Pleasure's
Probably.
ours. There you
Appreciate
go.
it, Dusty.
Dusty
Yep.
Thanks,
Evely
Dusty.
out here preaching facts, certainly. And we do. We appreciate them because I reached out to some
Right.
NFC. I reached out to some NFC people that do cover different teams, and Dusty hit me back right away. So good dude, man. And he's smart. I mean, he was
awesome.
spitting there.
He's spitting
And
ball.
knows exactly what he's talking about, which we want to hear, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, I mean, he again. I gotta watch here. Okay,
Subjectively.
I'm not going to say I do agree with his assessment of the Lions, but again, that you got to understand, he's covering the Packers. Like,
There's different
we don't-
opinions out there.
when is the last time we're saying good stuff about the Packers? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and their
You guys
job-
go at Goonst to Goonst every week, so
and they love them. So it's just
Yeah.
it's all perspective.
I mean,
That's
if
why
if
I'm
we
glad
talk
get a
to
different perspective,
if we talk to people in any city around the country, whether it's like Denver or whatever, they're probably gonna have similar and different opinions